What's good, everybody? Remember 17 here, and today we're gonna have a submission guide, specifically flying submissions from the clinch positions on UFC 5. As always, drop a like or subscribe to the channel if you already haven't, and we're going to get into every single one of these positions. And of course, before you guys ask, in order to deny all of these flying submissions, you're going to be holding high block, so R2 on PlayStation and RT on Xbox. So if you're trying to see if your fighter has these flying submissions available, you're going to go into their move list. Most of these flying submissions are locked behind level 3, outside of the exception for the rear naked choke. I think that one can be level 2 or 3. Of course, if there's an exception, there is an exception. So for the first one that we're going to show, we're going to be showing the flying armbar. And with this flying armbar, it's going to show another input that's L2, L1 and right stick up. That input is bullshit. The input that you need to be focused on is the one that says flying armbar to the collar tie. On PlayStation, it's L2, R1 and square. And on Xbox, it's going to be LT, RB, and X. So that's going to be the actual input for the flying armbar from the single collar tie. Now, the single collar tie, you initiate this with the regular clinch input, which is the old UFC 4 lead uppercut input. You input the flying armbar based on what you see on the move list, and boom, you end up here in this position. Now, there's some sneaky ways you guys can set up the flying armbar. One way, after throwing a knee into clinch and you end up in tie clinch, go back to punching, you revert back into the single collar, and now you'll be able to go for the flying armbar again. So, for another way to get into another flying submission, you guys saw in my last video, you can bail into the over-under position. If the hands are locked, that is the dominant over-under position. So from the dominant over-under position, you have access to this flying submission. This flying submission is going to be the flying triangle. This is for guys who have triangles level 3 or higher, and you can do the flying triangle from single under or over-under. So from over-under, you input L2, R1, and triangle. And on Xbox is going to be LT, RB, and X. And if you want to hit it from the dominant single under position, it is the exact same input. Now, keep in mind, currently in UFC 5, this position or this submission attempt is kind of bugged in the fact that if somebody denies it, it results in the two guys spinning around, but EA is going to be on the lookout for a fix. So just be aware of that. So the next flying submission is going to be the guillotine, but these inputs aren't really that accurate, so it's kind of a bit of a lie. It's really L2, R1 triangle and square, or LT, RB, or Y or X on Xbox, depending on stance, etc., etc. So, you go to single under, off of the clinch like this, and then from here, you input the guillotine, and you have options from here. Be aware we are aware of the concern about the stamina drain from the standing guillotine. That's going to be addressed, ideally soon. So, from the tie clinch position, what you get after throwing a knee in the single collar clinch, you press X in open space or A on Xbox. Now keep in mind, the standing guillotine is not the strongest entry, so when you drop down to the mat, it's very possible for your opponent to race your submission attempt if you go straight for it. So you can also input the standing guillotine when your opponent is pressed up against the cage and you have the dominant position. You input the guillotine, and if you walk up to the cage, it's going to automatically drop you down into the mat. So there's a number of ways that you guys can mix this up. You can go from the clinch, throw the knee, then immediately input the standing guillotine, kind of work that threat in, but just remember, this is not the end-all be-all. So the next flying submission that we're going to go for is the Kimura from the back clinch position, right? This one was pretty hard to hit on UFC 4 because not a lot of people had the level 3 Kimura, and the same thing applies in this game. But if you do have a level 3 shoulder lock on UFC 5 and your opponent takes your back in open space and you end up in standing back clinch, once you input to Kimura, you're going to end up in top side control with the Kimura enabled. Although this is not the strongest entry for the Kimura, so it's very likely that your opponent will be able to race your attempt and get out of the way. So the next flying submission is from the backpack position. This one's kind of weird because these different inputs do kind of work, but if you want to initiate the backpack, there's two ways to do so. You can go up by the cage, or you can do it in open space. So when you have your opponent pressed up against the cage with a dominant underhook, you're going to use the left stick to take yourself back behind there and input either L2, R1 in triangle or LT, RB, and Y on Xbox. Once you do that, you end up in the backpack, and when you input that same input again, you get the flying rear naked choke. You can also input square or triangle. That actually works. I wasn't sure if that really worked before, but you'll end up initiating the rear naked choke from this position. You can also do this in open space. My preferred way to do it, somebody goes for the get up when they're in bottom backside. They're in open space. It's the exact same input. So when you input for the back take and you jump up and you get your hooks in and input the rear naked choke, you'll be able to initiate this flying submission. So that's all of the current flying submissions on UFC 5. Remember, check the move set of your fighters before you're attempting any of these submissions. Some fighters may have other flying submissions, but they might have a lower level for something else. Usually the requirement is level 3 or higher unless there is an exception. So make sure that you check before you take your fighter into ranked championships. Let me know in the comment section what you would like to see next as a tutorial for UFC 5. There's a number of things I can cover, so whatever I can do to help y'all out, just let me know. Armbar17, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all of you. I'm out of here. Much love and take care.